What's up? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Nero Wolfe and the corpse that took the elevator, hit me up. What made you smile today? And where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready. Because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. Chapter 1. The Elevator That Went Up Alone. It was one of those New York mornings that makes you question whether the city runs on caffeine or chaos. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee and the third page of the Times crossword. Wolfe insists on completing it in ink, though he rarely touches the thing, when the phone rang. Goodwin, Nero Wolfe's office. The voice on the other end was female, cultured, and strained just enough to suggest either hysteria or high society. With women like that, it's usually both. Is this Mr. Wolfe's assistant? That's right. Archie Goodwin. What can I do for you? I need to speak with Mr. Wolfe immediately. It's a matter of death. I don't know how else to say it. I gave it a beat. There are days when those calls come like clockwork, and others when death prefers a nap. Today, I suddenly woke up. Can you tell me what happened, Mrs. Evelyn Varnell? My husband he's dead. We found him in the elevator, at his office. Now, I've heard a lot of ways to discover a corpse, but in the elevator was a new one. I jotted the name down and glanced at Wolfe's office. Door. Closed, of course. 11:02, right in the middle of his sacred orchid time. I'll need some details before I interrupt Mr. Wolfe's horticultural meditation. How exactly did it happen? I don't know. The elevator went up by itself to the 7th floor. No one called it. When it opened, he was slumped in the corner. Please, I need your Mr. Wolfe. Normally, Wolfe would have dismissed this as a matter for the police or the building superintendent. But I've developed a sixth sense for what will tweak his interest, and this smelled peculiar. A body that rides the elevator alone. That's not just murder, that's performance. Come to the brownstone, I said. 35 West 35th. We'll expect you within the hour. She hung up with the kind of finality that suggested she wasn't used to being questioned. I got up, knocked once on Wolfe's door, and cracked it open. Wolfe was elbow-deep in cymbidiums, gently misting them with the affection most men reserve for children or stocks. He looked up like I'd just belched during a Mozart recital. Archie, what is it? A woman just called, says her husband was found dead, alone, in an elevator, at his office. He sighed, set the sprayer down, and removed his gloves with deliberate disdain. Pfui, the police will see to it. She said the elevator went up by itself. That got him. He tilted his head the way he does when trying to decide whether the soup is oversalted or the world is undersane. Was it murder? She didn't say directly, but I'd wager lunch it wasn't heart failure. You don't call a detective over a bad pacemaker. He grunted. She's on her way, I added. Now he glared. You presume too much. And you're too predictable, I said, cheerfully. If I hadn't invited her, you'd have grumbled until dinner time, and then asked me why I turned away a promising fee. He muttered something in Serbian, one of his less romantic languages, and stomped toward the door like a bear being lured into a trap with honey-glazed insults. 25 minutes later, Mrs. Evelyn Varnell entered the office dressed in black satin with a hat that could have doubled as a lampshade. She was the type who looked both regal and exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days, but still wouldn't be caught dead with a hair out of place. "Mrs. Varnell," Wolfe said from behind his desk, barely motioning towards the red chair reserved for paying clients. "Sit, explain." She did both. My husband, Warren Varnell, worked at the Roper Building on Lexington Avenue. He ran a financial advisory firm, Varnell & Cole. He stayed late last night. I called him around 7. He said he'd be home soon. This morning his partner, Henry Cole, went in early. The elevator arrived with Warren's body inside. No blood, no wounds, just dead. "Was there anyone else in the office at the time?" Wolfe asked. "No. The cleaning crew leaves at 10. The elevator logs show no activity overnight, and the building security insists no alarms were tripped." Wolfe leaned back, hands folding like stubborn origami. "And the police? They think it was natural causes," she said. "But Warren had no medical conditions. I had an autopsy ordered privately. It showed traces of a rare neurotoxin, something called azapine." That made Wolfe open his eyes half an inch wider, a clear sign of thunderous intrigue. "Dadapo, know who did this, Mr. Wolfe. Warren had no enemies, not outwardly, but someone killed him, and they did it without leaving a trace." Wolfe considered her a long moment. Archie here again. This was the part where you could practically hear his brain gears turning, albeit greased with annoyance. He didn't like cases that were too clean. He preferred grime. This, being spotless, was suspicious enough to qualify. Finally, he said, "I will accept your case, Mrs. Varnell. My fee is $25,000, with a $10,000 retainer paid in advance. Mr. Goodwin will require access to your husband's office, his partner, and any documents pertaining to his business." She didn't blink at the price. Either she was wealthy or desperate, or both. "I'll write a check." Wolfe nodded once. "Good. Archie?" I stood. "I'll start with the Roper Building. Elevators don't murder people on their own. Somebody helped." As I reached for my coat, Wolfe added, "And Archie?" "Yes. Observe the elevator logs. I suspect the corpse rode alone. Yes, but someone may have pressed the button." He was smiling now, the kind of smile that meant trouble for somebody. I just hoped it wouldn't be me. Chapter 2. The Building That Breathed Lies. I arrived at the Roper Building around 10:30, just in time to see a cluster of early birds in suits fluttering into elevators with caffeine jitters and too much cologne. The place was a mirror and marble kind of joint, tall, slick, and way too proud of its own shininess. You half expected the building to tip its hat and ask if you had an appointment. The lobby had the usual setup: over-polished tiles, a security desk manned by a man who looked like he had once auditioned for the role of Bouncer Number 2 in a straight-to-VHS boxing flick, and a panel of elevators that gleamed like they had just confessed something. I walked up to the desk and showed him my license. "Archie Goodwin. I'm a licensed investigator working for Nero Wolfe. I'm here regarding Mr. Warren Varnell's elevator trip." The guard eyed the card like it had secrets. "Name's Oates. Building security. Yeah, that was a mess. Poor guy. Mind if I take a look at the elevator?" Oates pointed to the far right shaft. "Number 4. The one he was found in. Same car, same everything. We haven't touched it. Cops came, made their notes, then left once the ME figured it wasn't a homicide. Right. Natural causes, I said, stepping past. Nothing says peace like dying between floors. The elevator doors slid open, smooth and innocent. Inside, the car was spotless. Too spotless. No sign of anything, no stains, no scuffs, no struggle. Just that sanitized steel and brass glow. I stepped in and stood where a body might slump if you died standing. I pressed the 7th floor button. The doors shut with a whisper, and the car hummed upward. Here's the thing. Elevators make lousy witnesses. No memory, no judgment, no tells. But I'd seen enough bodies to know that if a man dies upright in one, it means something. It means timing. It means control. It means this was done for effect. The 7th floor opened into a quiet hallway lined with frosted glass doors. Half. The offices were dark. The others were filled with the low drone of phones and typewriters. I headed to Varnell & Cole. Modest lettering on the door, nothing flashy. Inside, a secretary with pencil-thin brows and eyes like an overworked accountant looked up. I'm not taking any more messages for Mr. Cole. That's fine. I'm not a message. Archie Goodwin, Wolf's office. She blinked. Oh, right. He said you might come. She buzzed the inner office. Mr. Cole? It's someone from Wolf's office. A pause, then a door opened, and Henry Cole stepped out. He was in his early 50s, lean with a nervous smile that didn't reach his forehead. He looked like a man who triple-checks a decimal point and still doesn't trust it. Mr. Goodwin, this is a terrible time, but come in. I followed him into the corner office. Neat, impersonal, no photos, just stock certificates in frames, and a Newton's cradle ticking away near the window like it had somewhere to be. I still can't believe it, Cole said, sitting down. Warren was my partner for 12 years. Healthiest man I knew. Jogged every morning, no smoking, nothing. His wife says a private autopsy found a neurotoxin in his system. Cole stiffened. I didn't know that. The police said heart failure. You're telling me it was poison? Azapine, I said, watching his eyes. Not a household item. No, it's not, he muttered. Finance isn't exactly the kind of field where you make enemies. Not the mortal kind, anyway. Tell me about Warren's last day. Anything unusual? Cole exhaled. He was distracted. Took a phone call around 6. Didn't say who. He seemed unsettled after that. Said he needed to stay behind and finish up something. What kind of something? Cole shrugged. I assumed it was one of the client portfolios. We'd had a disagreement earlier in the week. He wanted to withdraw from the Carson account. Said something smelled wrong. But that was just Warren being cautious. Paranoid, even. Did he tell you what bothered him about Carson? No specifics. Just that he didn't like the pattern. That's what he said. I made a note of that. One more thing. Anyone else in the office building late that night? Cole paused. Not that I know of. We usually leave by 7. Security locks the main doors at 8. You need a keycard to re-enter. And Warren had his. What about cleaning staff? They leave around 10. I suppose they could have seen something. I stood. Thanks, Mr. Cole. If you think of anything else, especially about that phone call, get in touch. As I stepped out, I glanced back. Cole had turned to the window, watching the city like it might accuse him. Back in the lobby, I waved down. Oates again. Got a copy of the elevator logs? He handed over a folder. Sure do. You'll want page 3. I opened it. The timestamps told a simple story. At 10:17 p.m., Elevator 4 moved from the lobby to the 7th floor. No recorded calls. No return trip until 7:09 a.m., a ghost ride. Motion sensor logs, I asked. Oates hesitated. We don't keep 'em unless something triggers an alarm, and nothing did. Of course not, I said, folding the report. It's much easier to kill someone when the machines are asleep. Back on the sidewalk, the wind had picked up, tossing paper cups down the curb like failed clues. I called Wolf from a payphone on the corner. Yes, he grumbled. No blood. No struggle. Just a man in a box. But I've got a few puzzle pieces. Report. Elevator was summoned around 10 at night. No call registered. Varnell's body was found slumped inside the next morning. Cause of death: azapine neurotoxin. Partner says he was jumpy after a mysterious phone call and had suspicions about a client named Carson. Wolf grunted. Interesting. Azapine is not a blunt instrument. It requires planning. So does dying in an elevator without anyone noticing. He was silent for a moment. Then, return at once. Bring the elevator log and the name of the cleaning crew. Planning something? Yes. Dinner. And if time permits, a murder. Hung up and hailed a cab. The pieces of this particular corpse clicking louder than the elevator's gears. Chapter 3. The cleaner who saw nothing back. At the brownstone, Wolf had finished dinner and was poking at his globe with a chopstick. It was one of his more arcane habits, usually reserved for digestion or when plotting the end of Western civilization. I dropped the elevator log on his desk. There. A nice linear mystery for your evening digestion. Elevator ascends to the 7th floor at 10:17 p.m. No calls. No return trip until morning. Our stiff rides up alone and stays overnight like a forgotten umbrella. Wolf tilted the folder open without touching it, eyes flicking across the page as if he could deduce motive from ink thickness. And the cleaning crew? Not ghosts, apparently. I got their names from building security. Crew of 3, Leon, Bristol, Maida Perez, and Denny Farrell. Assigned to floors 5 through 7 on Thursdays, which makes them our only verified humans inside the Roper building between 9 and 10 p.m. Interview them. You're assuming they didn't mop around a corpse and whistle their way out? I assume nothing, Wolf said, reaching for a bottle of beer he hadn't earned. You are the leg. Go stretch. Fine. But if any of them confess just to get out of work, I'm charging hazard pay. It took 2 calls to find the janitorial service that contracted for the Roper building, and 1 firm suggestion that I might involve the police before they coughed up the crew's contact info. I started with Leon Bristol, the night shift supervisor. He lived in a walk-up in the Bronx and answered the door in a Mets t-shirt and socks, with holes big enough to be zip codes. Yeah, he said after I flashed my license. We cleaned the 7th floor Thursday night. Look, we didn't see anybody dead. Mind if I come in? He hesitated, then waved me toward a stained armchair. Don't touch the thermostat, he added, like I was planning a sabotage. You start with floor 5 or 7? 7, he said, sitting opposite. We work down, always do. That night I was with Maida. Denny was in the supply closet inventorying. Time? About 9:30, maybe closer to 10. What did you see? Nothing. Varnell's office was locked, lights off. We vacuumed the hall, dusted the directory sign, and dumped the trash from Cole's office. Nothing out of place. And the elevator? He squinted. Funny thing. I remember calling for it around 10 to head down. It didn't come. It didn't come? Nah. I figured it was busy on the lower floors. We waited a bit, then took the stairs. No big deal. My ears perked up. So the elevator wasn't on the 7th floor when you finished? Nope. Doors didn't open. That contradicted the log. The log said elevator 4 ascended at 10:17 p.m. and didn't descend again. So, if it didn't show up for Leon around 10, who took it? Do you remember hearing it move? Anyone else waiting with you? Leon shook his head. Quiet night. Building was practically empty. Maida griped about the AC, but that's about it. Anyone else still around? No clue. We didn't check every door. I jotted it all down. Where's Maida tonight? She's working a hospital shift. Got her number if you want. I did and called her from the hallway. Maida Perez was brisk, no nonsense, and not thrilled to be interrupted during her break. We cleaned that floor, she confirmed. Didn't see anything strange. No man in the elevator, no smell, no scream, nada. But Leon says the elevator never came, she sighed. Yeah, that was annoying. We waited. Nothing. Eventually we just walked. Leon's knees were cracking like popcorn, but he didn't complain. Which elevator? Number 4, I think. Far right one. It's the quietest. Did you check the call button? Pressed it twice. The light came on. Then nothing. We gave up. Interesting. If they called it and it never came, either someone had already taken it or something jammed it. Next was Denny Farrell. He lived in Hell's Kitchen, and when I caught him at his corner diner, he was halfway through a chili burger that looked like it had died nobly in battle. He waved me into the booth like I was joining a wake. I didn't see squat, he said. Didn't even make it past the closet that night. You were inventorying? Yup. I swear I was in that supply room for 40 minutes. We had a missing case of floor wax. Floor wax is worth 40 minutes, he shrugged. Leon's strict. Plus, the storage closet's got heat. I wasn't exactly rushing. Okay. Didn't hear anything? Nope. The building's like a tomb at night. You can hear a sneeze echo down the whole hall. But I didn't hear no elevator, no screams, no nothing. I watched him chew for a minute. Have you ever seen Mr. Varnell stay late? Couple times. Real polite guy. Always said good night when he left. And Thursday? He paused. Didn't see him, but now that you say it, I did hear the elevator ding once around 10. I leaned in. You sure? Yeah, just one ding. No footsteps, then nothing. Which floor were you on? 7th. Closets right across from the elevators. So the elevator came. Dinged, but no one was excited. I scribbled the note. Have you ever heard the doors open? No, just the bell. Could have been a ghost for all I know, or someone who didn't want to be heard. By the time I got back to the brownstone, it was after 10. Wolf was in his chair, sipping beer and scowling at a book on Mediterranean herbs like it had insulted his lineage. Anything? He asked without looking up. The janitors didn't find the body. They left around 10. Elevator didn't respond when they called it, but one of them heard it dying. No footsteps, no doors. Wolf closed the book. A corpse cannot summon. An elevator? No, but someone else could. Maybe the same person who poisoned Varnell. And where is this person now? According to the logs, I said, dropping my coat, they vanished without ever coming down. Wolf lifted his brows just enough to mark interest. A contradiction. Good. Tomorrow you will visit the client again. I want to know what Warren Varnell feared, who he spoke to, what secrets he might have died with. Secrets, huh? Wolf nodded. In murder, he said, they are the currency. Chapter 4. The Widow with a Locked Drawer. The next morning, after my usual tango with the percolator and a round of passive-aggressive grunts from Wolf over the breakfast eggs being half a degree over-tempered, I was sent back uptown to visit Evelyn Varnell. Wolf had decided she was hiding something, or rather, that something was hiding behind her, and it was my job to poke around until one or both blinked. Her apartment was in a subdued Art Deco building on East 72nd, the kind that still boasted a doorman who'd tip his cap if you gave off the right scent of wealth or press credentials. I arrived at 10 sharp. The doorman, not impressed by my credentials or my face, called up first. "She'll see you," he said with a shrug, as though he disapproved of her decision, but couldn't do a thing about it. Evelyn Varnell opened the doctor herself. She was still in black, but today it was tailored slacks and a silk blouse, casual mourning with a touch of command. She looked rested, but in that way people do after they've exhausted their last emotion and come out hollow on the other side. "Mr. Goodwin, I wasn't expecting you so soon." "Grief has a short half-life in our line of work," I said. "May I?" She stepped aside. The apartment was minimalist, elegant and cold as an insurance clause. Nothing on the walls except a large abstract canvas in greys and burgundy. It looked like anxiety on a rainy Tuesday. "I assume you've found something," she said, motioning to the sitting room. I didn't sit. Not quite, but we have questions. Mr. Wolf wants to understand Warren's state of mind leading up to his death. You said he had no enemies. Are you sure? She took a moment to answer. He was cautious. Too cautious sometimes. But enemies? No, not in the way you mean. In what way, then? She hesitated. Warren had concerns. He felt watched. Not followed exactly, but surveilled. He told me he believed someone had accessed his files, confidential portfolios. Did he say who? No names. Just that something wasn't right. A few days before he died, he started locking drawers he never used to. Kept a copy of certain files with him at home, which was unlike him. Did you find any of those? I didn't look, she said stiffly. That was his business. Now, that was interesting. A woman who calls a detective within hours of finding her husband's body, but doesn't check the drawers he locked, in fear. Either she was noble or lying. Would you mind if I took a look? I asked. She gave me a long, unreadable stare. Then, with a sigh, she nodded. This way. We passed through a corridor of cream-painted walls and into Warren Varnell's study. Neat, masculine, and organized like a man who thought chaos was for lesser minds. Dark mahogany desk, a shelf of economic theory, a decanter of bourbon still half full. She pointed to the bottom left drawer. That's the one he locked. I knelt and tried the handle. Locked all right. Classic tumbler. Mind if I? She handed over a small brass key from a bowl on the bookshelf. I didn't want to invade his space. Not until I had to, popped the lock and slid the drawer open. Inside were 3 manila folders and a small spiral-bound notebook. The folders were labelled Carson D. Larson. Meritonal familiar names in New York's finance circles. I opened the Carson file first. Balance sheets, a few internal memos, and a letter marked Confidential. I scanned it quickly. It was a letter to Warren from Carson's junior partner, expressing concern that a recent offshore transaction had been misrepresented to internal auditors. There was a note in Warren's handwriting beside it, pattern repeating. Must I alert Cole? Ever seen this? I asked Evelyn. She leaned over. No. What is it? Evidence, I said, that Warren suspected something dirty in the Carson portfolio, enough to consider involving his partner. What kind of dirty? Money laundering, possibly. At the very least, some shell games didn't want regulators. Spotting. Looks like Warren was debating whether to report it or keep it in-house. I flipped to the Larson file. This one was thinner. A single balance sheet and a list of names and check amounts. Looked like campaign contributions. Legal, but excessive. It included a notation from Warren. Why 3 donations under aliases? The last file, Meriton, was emptier still. A correspondence log, 1 memo marked urgent, and a copy of a flight itinerary for someone named Philip Meriton. The note scrawled on top in red ink read, Meeting cancelled without explanation. Check Cayman accounts. It was clear what Wolfe would see in all this. Varnell wasn't just a financial advisor. He was keeping tabs on people who didn't want to be watched. People with power, maybe leverage. That's the kind of habit that gets you killed in elevators. The notebook was more personal. Jotted dates, timestamps and phrases like phone line interference, and Cole's attitude changed after June 9th. 1 page stood out, half-torn, barely legible. If anything happens to me, a safe deposit box. 47th and Madison, under James Elroy. Mrs. Varnell, I said, carefully sliding the folder shut, did you know about this? She looked pale. No, my God, why didn't he tell me? Maybe he thought you'd be safer that way. Or maybe he wasn't sure who he could trust. I tucked the notebook and folders into my coat. Wolfe will want to see these. And you'll need to request access to that deposit box. Do you think Henry, Mr. Cole, could have been involved? I think anyone with something to lose is now a person of interest, I said. Warren knew something. He just ran out of time. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Just nodded once, slowly, as if that made it real. As I left the apartment, I made a mental note to look into that flight itinerary and the Carson offshore shell game. But more than anything, I kept circling back to one thing. If Varnell had been scared enough to write a death contingency note, then whoever killed him had known how close he was to blowing something wide open. And if Wolfe was right, someone had used the silence of an elevator shaft to bury a secret mid-air. Chapter 5. The Man Who Didn't Like Questions. By the time I made it back to the brownstone, Wolfe was in his chair with a mouthful of beer and a glare that suggested I was already late, regardless of the clock. I tossed the 3 files and the notebook onto his desk with a little more flair than was necessary. Partly for effect, partly because my coat was getting heavy. Well, he grunted. Warren Varnell was sitting on a pile of suspicious paperwork. that made 3 of his clients look either criminal, paranoid, or both. Carson may have been laundering money. Larson appears to be playing fast and loose with campaign contributions. And Meriton has something offshore he didn't want traced. Wolfe arched a brow and opened the Carson folder first. I waited as he flipped through, eyes moving the way most people don't unless they're reading fine print in a last will and testament. Did Mrs. Varnell know? She said no, seemed shocked. She did not strike me as easily startled. Neither do house cats, I said, but even they leap when you drop a bucket. Wolfe ignored me. He tapped the notebook. This safe deposit box under a false name. Curious. I called the bank while I was in a cab, told them I was Warren's lawyer. They confirmed the box exists, but access is restricted to the listed account holder, James Elroy, or with a court order, which we do not have. Yet, Wolfe set the papers down and pressed his fingertips together. These are not ordinary clients. Carson is well connected. Larson contributes to half the state's Senate campaigns. And Meriton has a reputation. Bad? Worse. Invisible. That was Wolfe's version of a red flag parade. I said, I'd like to poke the bear. Carson first. I'll tell him Wolfe is looking into Warren's death. Watch how he twitches. You enjoy confrontation too much. It's cheaper than boxing lessons. Wolfe closed his eyes. Go, but do not threaten. I want a reaction, not retreat. Understood. I dialed Carson and Hunt from the front room. After being bounced through 3 assistants, I was finally put through to Frederick Carson himself. Voice like a velvet hammer. This is Carson. Archie Goodwin, investigating the death of Warren Varnell. A pause, then clipped and careful. I see. What can I do for you? I'd like to speak in person. It concerns a portfolio Mr. Varnell maintained on your behalf. It might involve certain irregularities. Mr. Goodwin, I'm afraid, I'm in meetings all day. I understand. This shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, unless you prefer we bring the matter to your board. A longer pause. Find my office, 4:30. He hung up without a goodbye. Polite men don't like the scent of wolves, even over the phone. At 4:20, I arrived at Carson and Hunt, a towering glass obelisk on Park Avenue, where people wore suits worth more than my monthly retainer. I was met at the lobby by a long-legged assistant who led me to the 32nd floor with the kind of silence that screams discretion. Carson's office was big, cold, and full of light, like a refrigerator built by an architect. He stood as I entered, tall, pale, with steel-grey hair and eyes that looked like they practiced their stare in mirrors. He didn't offer a hand. Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Carson. We sat. I understand you're looking into Warren's death, he said. A tragedy, of course. Suddenly, unnatural. That's what I'm trying to find out. Tell me, were you aware that Mr. Varnell had expressed concerns about your offshore holdings? He narrowed his eyes. No, I was not. And I'd be very curious what exactly you mean by that. He left notes indicating someone was misrepresenting transactions to internal auditors. Sound familiar? Carson's jaw tensed. We run a clean operation. Always have. I didn't flinch. Funny. He made a handwritten note. Pattern repeating. Must I alert Cole? That sounds like he saw this before. Carson stood, walked to the window. You're barking up a dangerous tree, Mr. Goodwin. That earned a smile. "You're not the first person to say that." He turned. "Let me be clear. If Mr. Varnell had concerns, he never brought them to me. And if he was compiling documents on my business, he did so unethically. Even if those documents show criminal activity?" Carson walked back to his desk and lowered his voice. "Are you accusing me of murder, Mr. Goodwin?" "No, I'm just observing that dead men can't testify." He stared long and hard. I didn't blink. Finally, he sat. "I suggest you leave." "That's your best suggestion yet." I left with nothing concrete but a gut full of warning bells. Carson didn't deny the documents existed. He denied ever seeing them. Classic dodge. And that remark about barking up the wrong tree. It sounded less like a threat and more like a confession wrapped in velvet. Back at the brownstone, I gave Wolf the rundown. He didn't like the questions. Of course not. Men who fear discovery never do. "Do we push him?" "No," Wolf said. "Not yet. There are still threads." I poured myself a glass of milk and leaned on the edge of the desk. "So, where next?" Wolf tapped the Meriton file. "This, the flight itinerary. Find out who Philip Meriton was going to meet, and why that meeting was cancelled. On it. And Archie?" "Yeah?" Wolf's eyes were closed again, but his voice was calm and cold. "Someone tampered with that elevator. No one ascends in death without help. Find the help." Chapter 6. The Elevator Technician. Who lied twice. I've met a few dozen people in my time who could lie with a straight face. Fewer who could lie twice without blinking. And almost none who could lie about something as dull as elevator maintenance and still make it suspicious. But, as Wolf says, dullness is often a disguise, not a defect. It was a little after 11 the next morning when I made my way back to the Roper building, this time not for suspects in tailored suits, but for the men who made sure the building's shiny parts went up, down, and didn't kill anyone in between. The elevator service was contracted to Claremont Vertical Systems, a name that sounded like it belonged in a stock portfolio rather than on a toolbox. According to building security, their technician on call the night Warren Varnell died was a man named Albie Kerr. He lived in Queens and had signed in at 5:02 p.m. Thursday for a routine inspection on elevators 3 and 4. The logs showed him signing out at 7:11 p.m. On paper, that cleared him. On instinct, it made me itch. Claremont's Midtown office was wedged between a dry cleaner and a diner that smelled like it hadn't changed its fryer oil since Roosevelt. The receptionist, a gum-popping redhead with the attention span of a birdbath, pointed me toward the back, where a man in grey coveralls was leaning over a metal parts tray and swearing under his breath. "Albie Kerr?" He glanced up, then straightened. "Late 40s, buzz cut, forearms like pork roasts." "Yeah, who wants to know?" I flashed my license. "Archie Goodwin, investigating the death at the Roper building last week." He frowned. "Oh, that guy in the elevator." "That guy's name was Warren Varnell. You were in the building the night he died." "Yeah, routine service, logged out before it happened. I told the cops." "You logged out at 7:11, said. That still leaves 3 hours before he was found dead in the same elevator you inspected." Kerr crossed his arms. "Everything checked out. No malfunctions. I don't work overtime unless there's an emergency." "Did you ride the elevators during your inspection?" "Sure. part of the process. Which floors? He scratched his cheek. Lobby to top, then top to lobby. We test brakes, sensors, and response time. Standard stuff. And elevator 4. Smooth as butter. I pulled the log from my coat. That's interesting, because this shows elevator 4 wasn't called again after 10:17 p.m. It went up and stayed put. But according to a janitor, it wasn't on the 7th floor at 10. They called it and it didn't come. Kerr shrugged. Must have been a fluke. Did you disable any call buttons during testing? No. Did you see anyone else use the elevators while you were there? He paused. No. Building was quiet. That pause was long enough to matter. I decided to tug the thread. Did you check the emergency override panel? His face flickered for half a second. Wasn't necessary. Everything was green. Now that was a lie. Wolf had once explained to me that override panels are inspected every time a technician logs a full system check, especially in buildings where the elevators are the size of freight containers and sometimes contain bodies. It's not optional. It's protocol. I stood up. Thanks for your time, Mr. Kerr. If you remember anything else, call me. He didn't ask for my number. That was another tell. I walked back to the curb and called Wolf from a phone booth near, a newsstand that smelled like wet ink and stale cigars. Yes, our elevator man lies like he's billing by the fib. Claimed he checked everything, said it was normal, but his timeline's too neat and his face too tight. I think he tampered with elevator 4's panel and locked it on the 7th floor. To do. Conceal something. Or to delay its discovery. Wolf paused. You think the body was placed there deliberately? I think someone wanted it found exactly when it was, no sooner, no later. If the elevator had been available earlier, cleaning staff might have found him before the morning. Wolf hummed low. Delay. It grants control. I shifted the receiver. Here's the kicker. Kerr claimed no one used the elevator while he was inspecting it, but the call log shows an unscheduled stop on the 6th floor at 6:52 p.m. Just one stop, then nothing. Did the police notice? They didn't care. They saw heart failure. But Wolf, what if someone met Varnell at 6:52 and something happened in that car before 10:17? Wolf's tone dropped half an octave. Return! Bring the log! I was halfway through the crosswalk when my phone rang again. I answered. Goodwin. A breath. Then Evelyn Varnell's voice. Tighter this time. Mr. Goodwin, I received something. By mail. Hand-delivered. No return address. What is it? A key. And a single sheet of paper. It says, You're next if you open the box. That stopped me cold. Don't touch it. I'm on my way. I caught a cab, my mind moving faster than the driver. Someone was watching her, still. Someone who knew about the safe deposit box and wanted to scare her off. But more importantly, someone who didn't yet know what Wolf and I already had. Back at the brownstone, I laid everything out. Wolf read the threat with a single raised brow. Primitive, he muttered, but effective. She's rattled, but not stupid. She will be watched, Wolf said, and we will proceed. To the box? Soon, but not yet. First, we invite Mr. Cole for a visit. Why now? Wolf turned to the notebook again, tapping the line that read, Cole's attitude changed after June 9th. That was the day Warren considered speaking out. Something shifted. Mr. Cole may know more than he claims, or he may have helped move a body into an elevator while pretending he was asleep. I cracked my knuckles. You want me to call him? Wolf smiled faintly. No, I want you to provoke him. Chapter 7. The Partner Who Played Both Sides. It's one thing to corner a suspect in their office, where they've got blinds and brass nameplates to hide behind. It's another to catch them off balance in a setting not built for lies, like a brownstone study, with Nero Wolfe 3 feet away and a glass of beer within reach. Henry Cole arrived just after 6. He wore a slate-grey overcoat too heavy for the weather and a face that looked like it hadn't slept since Thursday. The man was wound tight, but not twitchy. He was a planner, not a scrambler. Wolfe, of course, made him wait exactly 7 minutes before allowing Fritz to usher him in. That's the precise interval Wolfe uses to make people question their alibis, Mr. Cole, Wolfe said, not rising. Please sit. Cole gave me a look, as if wondering how much I'd already told Wolfe and whether it was enough to hang him. I smiled and leaned on the wall, arms crossed. I hope you don't mind the summons, Wolfe said, steepling his fingers. But certain matters in your partner's death remain tangled. I've already spoken to the police, Cole said tightly. Yes, they were satisfied with your account. I am not. Wolfe never says it like an accusation. He says it like a fact he's waited too long to correct. Cole exhaled. What is it you want? To clarify a change in your behavior. Warren Varnell made note that you became distant, even evasive, beginning June 9th. Why? Cole blinked, then forced a frown. I don't recall anything specific. Warren and I occasionally disagreed on strategy. Regarding clients? Yes, such as Carson. That froze him. Wolfe pressed. Warren suspected irregularities in the Carson portfolio. He debated whether to confront you. Instead, he locked his notes away. Why? I don't know, Cole said, suddenly defensive. We didn't discuss Carson in detail. NUBU. Did, Mr. Cole. We have Warren's handwritten annotation, must alert Cole. With a question mark. He didn't trust your response. Cole was silent. Perhaps because you were compromised. I resent that. Wolfe nodded. You may. That is your prerogative. But if you were aware of Carson's offshore manipulation and chose not to act, that makes you culpable. And if you assisted in removing Warren before he could speak. Now wait just a damn minute. Cole stood. I didn't move. Wolfe raised a single finger, and the room stilled like a conductor had just ended a symphony. You may sit or leave, Wolfe said, but you will answer. Cole sat slowly. I knew Warren was concerned. He mentioned odd transfers, but he said he'd handle it. I didn't press. Because you were afraid of what he'd find. Because I thought he was exaggerating. Warren had a tendency to overanalyze. That was his job. I leaned forward. Did you meet with Carson the night Warren died? Cole's face darkened. No. You're sure? I was home. Ask anyone. I smirked. Your cleaning crew says Elevator 4 stopped at the 6th floor at 6:52 p.m. That's exactly 1 floor below your office. Warren was alive then, and someone met him. That doesn't mean it was me. No, but the timing is tight, and the technician lied about inspecting that elevator. We think it was manually overridden, locked on the 7th floor with Warren's body inside. Cole's hands gripped the arms of the chair. "Are you saying someone used the elevator to hide? Him?" "I'm saying," Wolf cut in, "someone used the elevator to delay discovery after Warren died. The killer knew that cleaning staff wouldn't find the body unless the car was released the next morning." "A convenient gap, wouldn't you say?" Cole started, jaw clenched. "I didn't kill Warren." "Then help us," Wolf said. "With what?" "The safe deposit box." That got him. Wolf gestured to the notebook on the desk. Warren referenced a box under the alias James Elroy. He feared for his life and left instructions. "Do you know what's in it?" Cole didn't blink. "No." "Do you know why someone would send his widow a threat to stay away from it?" That shook him, visibly. His voice dropped. "She got a threat? Delivered yesterday, along with the key. A warning. You're next if you open the box." He rubbed his temple. "God, Mr. Cole," Wolf said, leaning forward with unusual emphasis. "This is no longer about corporate exposure. It is about murder. The documents in that box may have names. If you are not involved, then help us identify who is." Cole sat silent for a long moment. Then, finally, he said, "I'll help you access the box. I don't have legal standing, but I know someone at the bank. I can get us inside." Wolf nodded once. "Do so, and quickly. Whoever killed Warren is watching that box." Cole left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. I turned to Wolf. "You believe him?" "Partially," Wolf murmured. He knew more than he admitted, but his fear was genuine. "He's afraid of Carson?" Wolf's brow creased. "Or Meriton, or someone else Warren uncovered. Someone who's already been killed once and may kill again." I exhaled. "What now?" We let Cole arrange the visit. "You'll go with him. I want a full inventory of that box. And if there's nothing, there will be something," Wolf said. "A man like Varnell does not die for nothing." Chapter 8. The Safe Deposit Box That Screamed in Silence. The next afternoon, I found myself standing beside Henry Cole in the marble lobby of First Manhattan Trust, trying not to look like someone about to crack open a dead man's final riddle. Cole was jumpy, not the twitching, nervous kind, more like a man who's too aware of the cameras, the people, the angles of every shadow. He'd made the call that morning, said the contact was a man named William Thatch, Assistant VP, discreet, as a grave and just as cold. According to Cole, Thatch owed him a favor. That favor had gotten us inside without a court order. We were led down a narrow corridor, past rows of brushed steel doors that looked more like morgue drawers than storage units. The bank vault was quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, and just claustrophobic enough to remind you you'd never be the richest man underground. "This is the one," Thatch said, stopping at box 738. "Listed under James Elroy. I'll leave you two. Please lock up when you're done." He handed Cole a pair of gloves and nodded once, disappearing like a man who made a career of knowing less than he heard. Cole inserted the key. The lock clicked, sharp and final. He slid the box out and set it on the counter between us. We both stared at it like it might tick or hiss. Then he opened it. Inside were 3 items: a manila envelope sealed with black wax, a standard cassette tape unlabeled, and a small black notebook with a red elastic band. Cole reached for the tape. "Wait," I said. gloves, sighed, pulled them on, and handed me the cassette. Looked standard. Could have been recorded on anything. The notebook came next. It was slimmer than the one from Warren's drawer, and written entirely in shorthand, not the secretarial kind. Warren's own code. Slashes, underlines, abbreviated names. At a glance, it was gibberish. "Can you read this?" I asked. Cole shook his head. Warren used his own method. Only he could really decipher it. "Course he did," I muttered. I picked up the envelope last. It was heavy, thicker than it looked. I broke the wax, slid the contents out gently. Inside were 6 typed pages, single-spaced, and stapled to the front. A photo of Warren Varnell, dated 3 months ago. The header read, "Chronology of Malfeasance, Carson, Meriton, and Associates." Cole leaned in. The first page listed transactions, wire transfers, routing numbers, dates. Many matched notes I'd seen in the Carson file. But there were new ones, unfiled, marked only by amounts and offshore destinations. Warren had compiled them meticulously. Page 2 was more damning. It included correspondence between Carson's firm and a shell company based in the Caymans, Pembroke Holdings Ltd. According to the memo, Pembroke was being used to funnel money through fictitious investment vehicles. Several of the names mentioned matched the alias donors from the Larson file. Then came the stunner. Page 3 contained a memo from M to C. Short and curt. Varnell suspects. Delay. If needed, remove. Cole paled. "Do you think M is Meriton?" "Probably, but C could be Carson. Or you." He didn't argue. The remaining pages were analytical. Warren's breakdown of motive, opportunity, leverage. His final paragraph ended with, "If I disappear or die, it is not natural. This record must be seen by law enforcement or Mr. Nero, Wolf, W.V." I folded the document carefully, set it aside, and picked up the tape. Let's take this with us. Wolf might have a player in the basement who can help. We returned the box, locked it, and walked out with a shared silence. That wasn't quite trust. On the steps outside the bank, Cole lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "He knew he was going to die," he said. "He left this like a will." "No," I corrected. "He left it like evidence. And someone's already tried to erase it, once." As we headed for the cab, I caught something in the corner of my eye. A figure across the street, leaning against a lamppost, pretending to read a newspaper. Late 40s, tan coat, thick neck, something off. I nudged Cole into the cab and told the driver to take a circuitous route back to the brownstone. "Someone watching?" he asked. I didn't answer until we turned onto Madison. "Yeah, maybe more than one person. And if they know we've got this," I tapped the envelope, "then we're already on the list." Back at the brownstone, Wolf was in his chair, eyes closed, fingertips tented like a man listening to music no one else could hear. I placed the envelope and tape in front of him. "Well?" he asked, eyes still shut. I gave him the short version, the notebook in shorthand, the typed chronology, the memo between M and C, and the unknown voice on the cassette. He opened his eyes, took in the materials, and gave a slow nod. "This is sufficient," he said. "Sufficient for what?" "To provoke action." I stared. "You want to bait the killer?" "Precisely. They don't know what we've read or what we intend, but they know we have something, and they will act. And if they kill again, Wolf reached for the tape, as if it were already a confession. Then let them try. But they will come, here next. Of that I am certain. Chapter 9. The visitor who didn't knock it was just past 9 the following evening when the knock didn't come. That might sound like a strange way to begin a chapter. But Wolf's brownstone isn't exactly Grand Central. People who visit typically call first, or they knock with purpose. You don't just show up on 35th Street and loiter like a cat with unfinished business. Which is why, when Fritz came up from the kitchen with an odd expression and said, "There's a man outside the gate. He hasn't rung the bell, just standing there," I knew we were on schedule. Wolf set his beer down and said, "Describe him." Fritz nodded. Tan overcoat, no hat, heavy set, eyes that don't look at anything directly. I stood, already, halfway into my coat. Sounds like the one from the bank. Wolf didn't protest. I opened the front door just wide enough to peek past the wrought iron gate. Sure enough, our friend was there. Same tan coat, same posture, pretending to stare at a dead flower bed across the street like it owed him money. I stepped out. "Lose something, friend." He didn't flinch. Just turned slightly. Met my eyes. "You Goodwin?" "I am." He looked back at the sidewalk. "You're poking around where you shouldn't." "Funny. That's exactly what I thought about you." A small smirk tugged at one corner of his mouth. "I'm just here to deliver a message." "From who?" "Let's just say it's from someone who doesn't want to see you or Mr. Wolf come to any harm. You're 2 moves too late. Warren Varnell already took that harm on our behalf." His eyes flickered. He pulled something from his coat pocket. A business card. Blank on the front, except for a typed line. "Some things are heavier than truth. Let it stay buried." I took it. "What's your message?" He shrugged. "Think of it as advice, the kind people get right before they stop digging." Sounds like a threat. I don't threaten. I just appear before things go wrong. "Then you're overdue," I said, stepping closer. "Because they already have." His expression hardened. "Tell your boss that curious men end up like Warren, slumped in places they don't belong." Then he turned and walked away, not fast, but like a man who didn't expect to be followed, and would make it unpleasant. If he were, I let him go. Back inside, I tossed the card onto Wolf's desk. "He's not the brains. Muscle. Delivered the message, not the meaning." Wolf examined the card, then sniffed. "The kind of poetry one finds in garbage bins behind embassies." "You still think they're watching us?" "I don't think so. I know." He rose, rare this late at night, and paced behind his desk, the way he does when a theory is forming and the temperature of the room rises a degree or 2 with every step. "This man," he said, "was sent not to harm, but to warn, which means they're unsure what we've learned. They suspect, but they don't know. Should we be worried? Not yet, but we will provoke them further. I want you to deliver a copy of the chronology to Inspector Kramer in the morning, anonymously." I raised a brow. "Anonymous tips are usually for nervous widows and cowards." "Exactly. It will rattle them. They'll believe someone on the inside is leaking, which means they'll scramble." "And when people scramble," Wolf said, "they expose their patterns." I poured a drink, sat down, and eyed the silent tape player on the desk. Still haven't listened to the cassette. I've arranged for Saul Panzer to drop off a Vichy. Refurbished player in the morning. One with enhanced clarity. "Wolf, What if the killer already suspects we have the tape? What if that was the real trigger? Then they will come for it, Wolf said calmly. And if they do, we shall be prepared. We spent the rest of the evening in silence, Wolf reading with the air of a man timing a trap, and me watching the shadows through the front window. At exactly 10:38, the street light across the way flickered and went dark. 3 minutes later, a different car parked across from the brownstone. Different license plates. Same tan coat in the passenger seat. They didn't knock. Not yet. Chapter 10. The Tape That Was Never Meant to Be Heard. By morning, the car was gone, but its impression lingered like the echo of a scream no one acknowledged. Wolf hadn't slept. He claimed sleep was unnecessary when a trap was baited properly. I, however, am still bound by the human need for 6 hours and a decent breakfast. Luckily, Fritz was sympathetic to my suffering and made sure the eggs were hot, the toast crisp, and the coffee nearly violent in its strength. At 9:30 sharp, Saul Panzer arrived with a worn-looking cassette player that had the reliable chunkiness of 1970s paranoia. He carried it in a brown briefcase, nodded at me, then at Wolf, and said, "Cleaned, calibrated, works." "Thank you, Saul," Wolf said. "You've heard nothing. You've seen nothing." Saul didn't blink, never even walked in, and with that he left. I placed the player on the desk, inserted the cassette, and glanced at Wolf. He gave the barest nod. I pressed play. At first, nothing. A crackle of static. A mechanical hiss. Then a voice, low, slightly nasal, distinctly Warren Varnell's. "If you're hearing this, then something has happened to me." Wolf closed his eyes. "I don't know how much I'll be able to get through. I'm speaking into this tape because I can't trust paper anymore. Too many eyes, too many hands. Even Evelyn. I can't be sure she's safe. Or Henry. I just don't know." There was a pause, maybe a swallow. Then the voice resumed. It started with Carson, the Pembroke accounts. They were feeding money into entities that didn't exist, and when I started looking, I saw it wasn't just Carson. It was Larson, Meriton, possibly others. They were laundering money and hiding political favors, donations under fake names, shell companies funding elections from overseas. It was clean. Too clean. That's what tipped me off. He cleared his throat, audible even through the poor audio. I tried confronting Cole. Once, he told me to drop it. Said I'd worked too hard to throw my life away over other people's sins. That's when I knew he suspected. Maybe I even feared what I'd found. I looked at Wolf. His expression hadn't changed. He was listening with the same stillness, as if the orchids were blooming in rhythm. I created copies, files, notes, a chronology. One's in the safe deposit box. If you have it, then you know what they were doing. But here's what you don't know. They've killed before, quietly, disguised as overdoses, car accidents, even a suicide last year. All people who got too close. I didn't want to believe it, but I do now, the tape hissed. There's a man. I don't know his real name. I call him the mailman. He doesn't deliver threats. He picks them up. He's the enforcer. If he's seen you, you're already inside the circle. Wolf muttered, "The man in the tan coat." I nodded. The tape continued. "If anything happens to me, Evelyn is not to go near the files. She's innocent and scared. I should have told her, but I was trying to shield her from what comes next. A long pause, then a sound, metal scraping, possibly a door, and then, faintly, "Oh God, who's there?" Click, the tape was cut off. Dead silence. I ejected it slowly, the air in the room feeling 20 degrees colder. Wolf finally spoke. That was not a man expecting to die. "No," I said. "That was a man who knew he'd run out of time." Wolf stood and paced once, just once. "It is enough. Enough to go to the police?" Not yet. They would ask for a chain of custody. They would misplace things. No. First, we complete the circle. He tapped the Carson file, then the Larson contribution list. Arrange a meeting with Larson. Casual. In public. Why him first? Because Meriton is the ghost. Carson is too powerful. Larson is a man who pays for silence. He may be the weakest link. I pulled out my notebook. "And if he runs?" "He won't," Wolf said. "He doesn't know what we know, but he knows someone knows. That is pressure." Before I could respond, the phone rang. Fritz answered and transferred it. Wolf picked up. "Yes?" He listened for 4 seconds, then, without a word, passed me the receiver. "It's Evelyn Varnell." Took it. "Mrs. Varnell?" Her voice trembled, but it was steady enough to deliver the words. "They tried to break in. My door was jammed this morning. Nothing taken, nothing touched, just opened." "Did you see anyone?" "No, but someone wanted me to know they were there. I called the police. They shrugged, told me to install a better lock. Are you safe?" "I think so, for now. But Archie, what do they want?" I glanced at the envelope on Wolf's desk. Control, fear, and silence. Then I'm done being silent. I hung up and looked at Wolf. "It's starting," he nodded. "Good. Let them come." Chapter 11. The man who funded ghosts. If Warren Varnell had lived, I think he would have called it a convergence. Wolf, on the other hand, referred to it as a necessary combustion. I called it a Thursday morning with a ticking clock and too many moving parts. At 10:30 sharp, I was seated across from Charles Larson at the Regency Room, a ritzy little haunt off Fifth Avenue with too many forks and not enough sincerity. Larson was already on his second espresso, wearing a navy pinstripe suit that probably had its own security clearance. He greeted me with a politician's smile and a banker's handshake. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, as if we'd launched together for years. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I work for Nero Wolfe. I'm investigating the death of Warren Varnell." The smile slipped a notch. "Ah, yes, tragic business. He was very detail-oriented." "That's one word for it." Larson sipped his espresso like it might file his taxes for him. "So what is it you think I can offer, Mr. Goodwin? You made 3 donations last quarter, each under a different name, each to the same campaign. Do you deny it?" He raised his brows. "I certainly don't confirm it. I have a file that suggests otherwise, and it's not just you. Varnell was building a case. Offshore accounts, shell companies, laundered contributions, all leading back to a circle of mutual interest. That sounds dangerously close to an accusation." "No," I said. "An invitation." He tilted his head. "To what?" "To survive. Because the man who helped Varnell die is now circling the rest of you." And unless you want to be the next body in an elevator, you'll want to get ahead of this." Larsen set his cup down carefully. "You're saying I'm in danger?" Saying you already were. The people behind this aren't just laundering money, they're eliminating liabilities. And Varnell wasn't the first, he was just the loudest. I didn't know they'd go that far. Did you know anything about a man called the Mailman?" He hesitated, just for a flicker, then shook his head. "You should," I said. "He watched Varnell die. He's watching Wolf now. And if you're smart, you'll ask yourself why." Larsen leaned back, fingers steepled. "What does Wolf want?" "Names. Proof. A crack." His eyes moved to the window, where taxis honked and New York pulsed like a restless vein. "There's someone else," he said finally. "Behind Carson. A fixer. Quiet. Doesn't sign anything, but he moves the pieces. Name? I don't know, but I can find out. There's a meeting tomorrow night. Carson, Meriton, and 2 others. Not in an office. Private space in Midtown. They think it's secure." I pulled out a pen. "Address." Larsen scribbled it down. "If Wolf's planning something, tell him not to wait too long." "You're flipping on your own?" He shrugged. "I've funded ghosts for years. It's about time I stopped being one." I left him with the check and a slow-burning fear I knew would ripen by nightfall. Back at the brownstone, Wolf didn't look up from his crossword. "Report." Larsen cracked. "There's a meeting tomorrow night. Carson, Meriton, and others. Probably the core group behind the laundering. He gave us the address." Wolf grunted. "He wants immunity. He wants to live." Wolf tapped the crossword, square twice, and finally looked up. "And what of the woman?" Evelyn shaken but resolved. "They broke in without taking anything. A warning. She must stay under watch. I'll have Saul post outside, silent and close." "Good. And Kramer?" I smiled. "Got the file anonymously. He called an hour ago. Asked if I'd ever heard of a laundered election cycle. I told him I'd get back to him after dinner." Wolf allowed himself a brief, satisfied hum. "It begins." "You're setting a trap." "No, I'm arranging a confession." He reached into the envelope, removed the typed chronology again, and slid it next to the cassette tape. When men act in darkness too long, they begin to believe the world can't see them, but Warren saw. And now, so do we. I crossed my arms. "Tomorrow night, then," he nodded. "Prepare the chessboard, Archie. Because after tomorrow, there will be no more pawns, only kings and corpses." Chapter 12. The Gathering at Glass, House Lane. The meeting took place in a high-rise suite on Glass House Lane. A location so discreet you'd miss it unless you were looking through the city with a sniper's eye and a banker's Rolodex. It was the kind of room with too much glass, too much silence, and furniture designed to make you feel like money was watching. Wolf, of course, did not attend in person. He sent it to me. Carson was there. Meriton, finally visible. Larsen, looking, twice his age, and one man no one introduced, though I already knew who he was, the one Warren had called the Mailman. He stood by the minibar, like a broken promise, eyes dead and pale. I stepped into the room at 8:01 p.m., sharp, carrying a slim black case, and the smugness of a man who knew the match was almost over. Carson barely looked up. "You're late." "No, I'm right on time. You, however, are several crimes overdue." That earned a twitch from Meriton. Carson straightened. "You were warned." "I was, and thank you for the courtesy." I set the case on the table. "This, gentlemen, is what we in the business call a reckoning." I opened it. Inside, 6 copies of the Chronology of Malfeasance, the tape player, the cassette. Carson's face drained. "That tape doesn't exist." "Which is why you had your fixer loiter outside Wolf's house, and why Evelyn Varnell's apartment door was jimmied. You knew Warren kept records. You just didn't know who'd find them." Meriton stepped forward. "You can't prove a thing. Maybe not, in court. But Wolf doesn't care about the court. He cares about logic. And logic says Warren Varnell was killed to silence him. The elevator was locked on the 7th floor because your man—" I nodded at the silent brute by the minibar. "Overrode the panel after Warren collapsed. I was never in that building," the man growled. I smiled. "But you were. We have logs. We have a witness who heard the elevator ding at 10:17 p.m. And we have Wolf's deduction. Warren was poisoned earlier. Not in that car. He died elsewhere. You moved the body. And you did it to stall time, because discovery was dangerous, but delay brought silence." Larson spoke then, voice low. "Tell them what you told me, Goodwin." I turned back to the group. We gave everything to the police, anonymously. But that was the opening act. What we didn't give them was this tape, the final record. I hit play. Warren's voice filled the room like a ghost coming home. When the final words echoed, "Who's there?" I let the silence settle like dust. Carson stood, too calm. "This doesn't change anything." "Wrong," I said. "It changes everything. Because Wolf isn't interested in dragging you through legal mud. He's interested in forcing your hand." Carson's smirk faltered. I continued. "At exactly 9 p.m., a second copy of that tape will be delivered to Inspector Kramer, unless Wolf hears from your lawyers first. If you resign from all public boards, dissolve your offshore shell companies, and issue a full confession of financial misconduct, Wolf will let the law sort out the rest. Quietly." Carson flared. "That's blackmail." "No," I said. "It's equilibrium." Meriton muttered something under his breath and bolted toward the door. The mailman took a step, but Larson blocked him. "You brought this on yourself." "He," said to Carson. "I left them like that. Half-crumbling empire, half-stunned silence. The trap hadn't just closed, it had collapsed inward, swallowing everything but the truth." Back at the brownstone, Wolf was with his orchids. I delivered the update over a glass of beer and a nod. "Kramer will handle the clean-up," I finished. "He said it was a bit too neat for his liking, but he's not refusing the gift." Wolf grunted. "He rarely does. Carson will fold. Larson's already flipped. Meriton's vanished. They often do. And Evelyn? She called an hour ago. She is relieved and grieving." I sat down, watching the shadows stretch across the study. "You know," I said, "it's funny. For all that noise, for all those names and numbers and poison and elevators, it came down to a man afraid to write the truth on paper." Wolf nodded, not looking at me. "He left it on a tape, in the dark, alone. Men like Warren Varnell," Wolf said slowly, "do not fear dying. They fear being erased." He turned to his orchids, adjusting a bloom with the gentleness of a confession, and we did not let that happen. We sat in silence, the kind that only arrives when a question has finally been answered. Then Wolf, without turning, said, "Archie, there is a new variety blooming tomorrow. You'll fetch it." I grinned. "Of course, it's not like I solved a murder or anything." He sipped his beer. "Exactly.